So, you can't be bothered to look through 50 pages of the mid-season changes, but you still want to play Belveth optimally. Well, this is the perfect video for you. As a challenger Belveth main, I'll be doing a rundown on Leafo Tempo's return, the new itemization for Belveth, and why Belveth is now S tier after Riot's complete item overhaul. Starting off with the return of Leafo Tempo. While sharing the same name, the new Leafo Tempo works a bit differently. The new Leafo Tempo gives you 5% attack speed for every auto per 6 seconds, stacking up to 6 times. At max stacks, your autos will do bonus damage that scales directly with your total bonus attack speed. This might sound perfect for Belveth's kit, but after testing it on Tournament Realm, I think Riot was way too conservative with the Roar of Leafo Tempo, and that this rune is always going to be worse than Conqueror until Riot buffs it. To show this, on screen now you'll see the damage of the most common early game combo at level 3 with Leafo Tempo juxtaposed against the exact same combo with Conqueror, where Leafo Tempo did over 10% less damage. This trend continues in the mid game, where at level 11 with 3 completed items. When executing the most common mid game combo, Conqueror only dealt 14 less damage than Leafo Tempo, despite Conqueror being a rune that targets both healing and damage, as opposed to Leafo Tempo, which only targets damage. In late game, at level 18 with 6 items, you'll see that Leafo Tempo only dealt around 8% more damage, again despite it being a purely damage focused rune. To apply these numbers to practical gameplay, I think Leafo Tempo is always going to be worse than Conqueror for 3 main reasons. First, Conqueror is significantly stronger earlier mid game, which is where you're the weakest as Belveth with regards to your kit and you need the most support. Second, to fully utilize Leafo Tempo, you need to auto a lot, and since your Q doesn't count as an auto attack, this is extremely problematic as you will almost never get any significant value from it in early and mid game due to the fact that you're quite spell reliant at those stages of the game. Finally, I think because Leafo Tempo is so auto reliant, to fully utilize it, you're going to have to play in a way that is sometimes suboptimal to try to weave in as many auto attacks as you can, increasing the risk associated with an already risky champion. Honestly, having tested out the new Leafo Tempo a billion times in scrims, I do think Riot will buff it sooner rather than later, and this could sway my judgment as to whether Conqueror is still the optimal rune, depending on what the buffs are. So, to make sure you're fully equipped with the best info, make sure you join my friendly Discord community where you can ask me or other challenger players any questions, and I can inform you of the most up-to-date Belveth runes and itemization. Link in the description. I know there are a lot of changes regarding items, so to make sure this isn't just some information dump, I try to keep it short and highlight the few important changes that you guys need to know. First, Bork got nerfed for 10 AD, while Kraken got nerfed for movement speed, 5 AD, and pretty much all of the third strike proc scaling. As a result, I think that whilst Kraken is still a decent first item, there are going to be much more scenarios where you go Bork now, especially since the meta is going to be a tank driven meta. Second, Stridebreaker got hit for 10 AD and a bit of attack speed. Its phase part of it is also gone, and I see a lot of panic online, but I think these nerfs don't really hurt Belveth too much because the main nerf is really the movement speed buff, and since you have dashes you don't really utilize that as much anyway, so I think Stridebreaker is still the optimal second item for Belveth. Third, Cleaver got nerfed for 14 AD, and I think this is pretty significant. While there was still some debate before on whether you go Terminus or Cleaver, here on out you always go Terminus instead of Cleaver. Finally, while pretty much all items got nerfed, Jackshaw only lost 5 of each resistance, but has 50 increased HP. I think this kind of evens out the buffs and the nerfs, and I think Jackshaw is now a must buy as your final or 4th item. Okay, I know I've been yapping on for a little bit, so for you ADHD kids out there who have lost focus, just refer to this cheat sheet here and you'll be fine. The first 3 items are usually quite standard. There is some variance with regards to the 4th item, but generally speaking, I still like building the Terminus Wits End combo. Honestly though, any item you build listed in this cheat sheet won't be too bad, it really just depends on your objective of the game. All in all, to sum up how Belveth will do in the next split, I think she will kind of return to that S tier she was at before the consecutive nerfs last split. The reason is because outside of item nerfs not really affecting her, AP items are mega nerfed, and tanks, which generally struggle against Belveth, are going to be at the apex of the meta because of the relatively less item nerfs they receive, thus giving Belveth very good matchups where she can scale safely. However, whilst Belveth does well into most tanks, there are exceptions such as Poppy and Amumu, which a lot of you have told me you struggle against and requested me to include a section on how to play these type of matchups. This brings me to my next section, which is how you want to play against bad matchups. This last part is going to be a supplement to the Belveth guide I made when I first created this channel, so if you haven't watched that, I recommend you watch it after this video because there are a lot of good general tips in there as well. I split this section into 2 parts. One for CC champions and one for assassins. First, for CC champions such as Poppy and Shin, which are going to be meta this split, there are 2 main concepts you need to master in order to succeed in these difficult matchups. First, you need to understand that you have an advantage in tempo because you will always have a faster clear speed than these control champions, and you need to abuse said advantage to find good gank windows or favorable skirmishes. Ganks are self-explanatory. You'll full clear around 15 seconds before enemy jungle on each rotation, so you will always have a window to gank with numbers advantage. But when I say finding favorable skirmishes, it is a bit more complex and requires setup. Generally, what I mean by these favorable skirmishes is you finish your clear, and if you do have prio, ping your laner to come invade the enemy jungle together, because not only will you have a numbers advantage, against these Amumu Rammus sort of champions, you are generally stronger than them early in skirmish power, so make sure you abuse that short window of advantage you have in order to make the rest of the game easier. The second tip when it comes to dealing with these CC counter champions is that you need to be very aware of your positioning and the cooldowns of those specific CC spells. For example, if you watch my stream and see me play against Poppy, which at this point is like once a day, you know I stress the importance of fighting away from the Poppy as opposed to just barreling into a full 5v5 contest. I think this trait is one that is extremely rare in low elos, but in high elo, you'll notice that when playing against those type of champions that completely counter your kit, good players usually tend to find good flanks away from those specific champions in order for them to play freely. This is no different with regards to Belveth, so just make sure when team fighting, don't autopilot like an NPC and just start using your spells, but take time to set up the fight and find creative angles that allow for you to excel. In addition to positioning, I think it's also important to recognize cooldowns of certain spells. For example, when playing against Talia E, a lot of players will always either spam their Q while the Talia E is up, or be afraid to fight when the Talia's E has expired. So make sure when playing against these sort of champions, recognize your window to fight. For example, if Talia uses E on the wave, instead of sitting back and waiting for a miracle to happen, ping a team to engage, or even force an engage and capitalize on the enemy disrespecting you by casting E like that. Now onto assassins. Whilst this is a very important tip, I think the only thing you guys need to keep in mind is to make sure to use your E when you're expecting the burst damage. This kind of ties into what I talked about in the initial Belveth guide, but good players don't only use their E for damage, but also use it for its resistances, and I think generally against assassins such as Rengar or even Kha'Zix, using your E to survive the initial burst is significantly more important than saving it for the execute threshold. So as long as you're cognizant about using your E to counter the burst from assassins, these matchups are a lot more straightforward than you'd think. That's it for the video today. I tried to compact new season changes as well as possible, and if you guys do appreciate it, I really hope you guys can like, comment, and most importantly subscribe, as will get me one step closer to monetization. Lastly, if you guys are interested in coaching, I've made it very affordable, so just contact me on Discord. You can ask anyone I've coached, they'll promise you it's well worth it. Join the One community by joining the Discord and watching me on Twitch, and peace. We're out of here.